The creation account establishes the basic rhythms of time. God speaks light into existence and then arranges light and darkness in a rhythm so that there's a day and night. On day 4, he introduces the heavenly lights, the sun, moon, and the stars, and they begin to mark out larger structures of time. The moon marks out months by its various phases. The sun marks out the year with the solar phases that it goes through and the solar movements. But the heavenly bodies are not just there to mark out what we think as secular time, clock time, as it were. But God created the sun and the moon to mark out liturgical time. The heavens are a liturgical clock, which means that liturgical time is not some kind of superimposition on natural time, but natural time is itself liturgical. God designed time in order to be a pattern, to set patterns for meeting with Him and to set patterns for our life in the presence of God. This comes out in a couple of ways in the creation account. When God sets the sun, moon, and stars in the heavens, He says they're for signs. They're supposed to be for symbols that predict things and prophesy things. They're for keeping track of days and years, but they're also for seasons. And the Hebrew word that's used that translated as seasons in Genesis 1 is moedim, from moed, which is the basic term for liturgical festival time. And that's literally true. The heavenly lights set the festival times for ancient Israel. Israel knew when to celebrate Passover because they were watching the moon. They knew when to celebrate a new moon festival because they were watching the phases of the moon. They knew when the 7th month came because they were watching the phases of the moon. The moon was setting the liturgical clock for Israel, and they would count off certain days from a certain phase of the moon until the festival was to take place. But that's built into the creation. Liturgical time is built into creation because the heavenly lights set out liturgical festivals. But we also have the weekly Sabbath that's built into the creation. That's not obvious in the heavenly lights. We don't have a weekly pattern with the moon, a weekly pattern with the sun. But God has set up and established by His own activity, He's set up and established a pattern of 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. And that's part of the creation design of time. That rhythm is part of the creation design. Liturgical time, so liturgical time is part of creation. It's built into creation. It's part of the fabric of creation. Just as liturgical place is part of the fabric of space, just as sacrifice is part of the fabric of creation, so liturgical time is part of the fabric of time per se. In both Israel and in the church, that fact is elaborated in redemptive time, redemption of time by the establishment of a festival calendar. Israel redeemed time by celebrating God's great acts of deliverance from Egypt, His giving of the law at Sinai, the entry into the land and the harvest of the land, and the various harvest festivals of the Old Testament cycle. And in the church, we redeem time and restore time by marking out the great events of the life of Jesus. We move from the advent of Jesus to a celebration of His birth, to a celebration of His appearance and His epiphany, into a commemoration of His sufferings, leading up to Holy Week and the commemoration of the death of Jesus and His entombment over Holy Saturday, and then the glorious resurrection of Jesus that we celebrate on Easter and the coming of the Spirit at Pentecost. That whole cycle is a redemption of time. It's taking the created cycles that are already liturgical and taking them up into a new covenant key so that time itself becomes Christianized. As I said at the beginning of this brief series, the liturgy is the place where culture becomes Christianized. Space is one of the basic coordinates of any culture, and space becomes Christianized in the liturgy. Time is one of the basic coordinates of any culture. How do you keep time? And time gets Christianized in the first instance by the liturgical calendar, because the liturgy is the first Christianization of culture.